How Good Friday marked the death of my marriage. I'll never forget the feeling I had when I realized my wife and best friend was cheating on me, and my marriage might be doomed. Now, I'm not religious, and I'm certainly not comparing myself to Jesus, but the irony of the day isn't lost on me. The death of my marriage started on Good Friday, a day associated with mourning. The Bible says that Good Friday was the day Jesus was crucified and killed. My understanding is that his followers had lost hope and mourned the end of his life. Little did they know at the time that he would soon be resurrected, and a new, more joyful life lay ahead for them. Little did I know, on this day, that I was about to enter a very dark period and come out with a more joyful life than before. Happy birthday. It also happened to be the day before our youngest son's first birthday party. A one-year celebration of the moment I sat in the hospital room with her through a delivery that was scary and forced us to make some quick decisions with the doctor. We held hands and told each other how much we loved each other through tears. I saw her consumed with a fearful look I've never seen before. She was sweaty, messy, unkempt, and in pain, but all I saw was the only person I wanted to be with. While I was scared, I was also excited for the next step we were taking on our beautifully perfect path as family. Fast forward 1 year later. I had the day off of work. She had been struggling with stress and feeling like she lost a step after returning to a stressful job after 9 months of maternity leave. I thought it would be a nice gesture to take the kids out of town to my parents' house, where we were hosting the party. She could get a full night of sleep in our bed, without waking up for one of the kids for the first time in over 2 years. We also had a 20-month-old. Our opposing days. On this day, she went out to lunch with coworkers, like she did every Friday. They took pictures that day and she sent some to me. I could tell she was having a great time. I, meanwhile, sent her a photo of my youngest son's high chair, him, myself, and our floor covered in diarrhea. Now this is not something I would normally take a photo of, but I could not believe how messy things were. And always trying to find the humor in life, I thought the opposing days we were having was funny. Skip ahead if you don't want details. He got sick at breakfast and his diaper somehow got moved to the side. It all flowed like a waterfall down the nooks of the high chair, all over the dining room floor. I had to keep our very curious dog and our toddler away from what looked to them like the most interesting finger painting project ever. As I got out handfuls of garbage bags, old towels, and disinfectant, it felt like a scene in a mob movie where they have to clean up a messy murder. It was stressful, but I found the humor in it and sent my wife a photo to show her how bad things can get and, let's be honest, earned some brownie points for taking one for the team that day. The first denial. Later that day, I went to Costco near my parents' house to grab some food for dinner and items for the birthday party the next day. I called my wife to see if there was anything else she could think of that I should grab. She said she was on her way home from work and just stopped at Old Navy to return clothes. I knew something was off. She had a tone to her voice that was familiar. One where she's out with people. I've never been jealous. I was always confident in our commitment to each other, and the fact that we had our social circles. I never thought twice when she went to bars, Vegas, or lunch with male coworkers, so I asked her, "Who are you out with?" When she said, "Nobody," I knew she was lying. I didn't feel a pit in my stomach yet, but I knew something was up. So, I looked up her location because we had a shared Find My iPhone account and saw that she was actually at a bar we'd been to many times. Okay, I thought. Maybe she's meeting up with somebody and planning some sort of surprise for me. I mean, technically, I wasn't wrong. Paranoia starts to creep in. I checked in periodically through the night to see where she was going, and she did go to Old Navy, eventually. I called her about an hour later when I was making some instant Kraft macaroni and cheese, because there was a weird texture in the bowl and, apparently, I forgot Google existed in that moment. And I probably wanted to check in for more clues. She told me the texture was normal and it even says so on the container. She was right. She also sounded mildly annoyed. I found out later that he was in the car with her on speakerphone. For the sake of not identifying anyone, let's call him Donald. Why? Because, unlike me, he's very political and makes it a big part of his life. I'm pretty middle of the road. He can't stand anyone conservative, but especially Donald Trump. So, while I'm not a Trump fan myself, it feels very fitting to call him Donald going forward. Let's break down the similarities real quick, just to rub it in more. They both feel like they are always in the right. Anyone else who is not in full agreement with them is an idiot. They both get envious of others' success. They both have terrible hair. They both had affairs. Only the fake Donald had the hubris to call out the real Donald for doing this on his Twitter account after cheating on his wife, with my wife. I would question both of their morals and values, to say the least. Anyway, back to the mac and cheese. Like I said, she seemed annoyed. She later told me she was annoyed. Because, as she would later tell Donald and me, she felt as if I was ruining her night off. Let that sink in. She was on a date with another man and was mad at me for calling her for the second time that evening. She also told him she felt as if she had 3 children, our 2 kids and me. Now, from this point I'm going to write from my perspective on this night, not what really happened. In a future post, I'll fill in the facts to make sense of it all. Then it hits me. As I put the boys to bed, I could see that she was at the train station. Okay, her girlfriend she was probably meeting up with to plan my birthday surprise, 9 months early, must be riding the train back to somewhere. I knew that didn't sound logical, but I couldn't think of a reason why she would be there. Then I remembered something and my heart sank. A couple months before, she went on a work trip a couple hours out of town for the week and stayed at a hotel with her entire office. Before the trip, she was really mean and cold to me. She had returned to work at the beginning of January, and the return was really hard on her. She felt stressed. She felt like she had lost a step. She had a powerful, stressful job. She didn't feel beautiful, and she told me she felt dumb, even though she used to be one of the smart people in the office. She was already in pretty good shape, especially for having a baby, and I was just as attracted as ever to her, but she lost more weight and bought new clothes. I liked the old body, and I really liked the new body too. So did she. We still weren't having much sex though. Not because I hadn't tried. We had 2 kids under 2 years old and were both working full-time and taking care of the kids and house every day. We were both candles burning at both ends. I was just willing to still use my burn end for pleasure at the end of the night. Then a week away happened. When she got back from her trip at the end of February, I saw libido in her I hadn't seen since she read through the 50 Shades of Grey books, and I told her at some point, I love having sex, but I don't know that my body can keep up this frequency this long. Now she wanted sex. And she wanted a lot of it. And it was great sex, as it had always been. I noticed the instant change and would joke around and ask, "What happened on your trip?" I always trusted her completely and would never have thought an affair was possible, because of our relationship, long history, and shared strong moral values. I figured the rest and time to herself rejuvenated her. It became a joke when she got ready for work in her new clothes, taking an extra glance in the mirror, and I'd tell her how good she looked and ask who the other guy was. But I was happy and secure. I had a beautiful, smart, successful wife. But that night, on Good Friday, I felt my heart sink when I started to put the clues together. I thought that maybe she met somebody on her trip and finally had a night where he could take the train down and meet her while I took the kids away. Paranoia now becomes my roommate. Putting the kids to bed that night was one of the hardest nights of my life. Knowing, almost certainly, that my best friend and love of my life was out with somebody else, taking advantage of my goodwill to give her a night off, was like a perpetual kick in the nuts. I kept trying to be optimistic, thinking, maybe she's meeting with a friend, but she always told me when she met with friends. I would try and force myself to believe that maybe she's planning something for me. But I'd keep remembering that there wasn't an occasion to plan for. And my actions of constantly checking her location didn't match with the feelings of trust one was trying to force myself to have. Another phone call. Later, she called me from the mall, and we talked, while I watched her phone move on the map from a different train station, which happened to be on the same block as her office, miles from the mall, inching up the freeway toward our neighborhood. Did she go back to her office and fulfill some fantasy? Was she at the other train station? Both? We chatted for a few minutes, then hung up, and I tried to fall asleep while I desperately searched our banking app for a charge to Taco Bell, since that's where she told me she stopped for dinner. I checked every social media app for photos others had taken and posted at the bar I saw on her phone's location, and both train stations that night to see if she appeared in the background of any. Both searches turned up cold. I went to bed trying to fall asleep, but wondering what was about to happen to my marriage, my wife, my kids, and my future. I couldn't tell my parents yet. I didn't know anything concrete, and I didn't want them to give away clues to her the next day that I knew something. I was married, but started feeling more alone than ever. The day after I was almost certain she was cheating on me, my wife showed up at my parents' house for our youngest son's first birthday party. I had arrived the day before. He was going to turn 1 in a few days, and we figured we'd throw him a birthday party while everyone was in town for Easter. We hadn't even had him a year, and she, I assumed, was already with somebody else. Party time. Looking back, it's really hard to judge how our interactions were that day. We both said after that it was colder than normal. Was that because I knew something was going on and I was distant from her, or because she was carrying some guilt that day? Probably a mix of both. My family insists the biggest Oscar snub of that year was me not being nominated for hiding what I was really feeling inside from everyone, posing for pictures, and playing with the kids as if my gut and heart weren't being ripped to shreds inside. The party itself went really well. I hung out with my 2 kids, my extended family, and my group of friends that I've known since I was 6 years old. We ate pizza, played in the bounce house, took videos, and all gathered around the cake to sing happy birthday to my youngest. That night, after everyone had left, it was just my parents, my wife and I, my brother and his wife, and all our kids at the house. The hard evidence. While she showered, I grabbed her phone and checked her location history, something I just learned you could do the night before, and got the hard evidence that she was lying about her location the night before. I took photos with my phone so that I could document it without a trace on her phone, and felt my heart beating so hard I was convinced I could hear it in my ears. The kids had all gone down for bed and we were hanging out in the living room. My wife and my sister-in-law were drinking wine and we were talking about all sorts of random subjects. At some point, everyone's voices started to get loud and I reminded everyone, hey, we're all in the same room and the kids are asleep. Because no parent wants to have a good time broken up by a baby waking up. My wife gave me a nasty look, then looked at my sister-in-law as if to say, do you see this wet blanket I'm stuck with? Now, ever since we dated, I got nervous when she drank. She didn't drink daily and she wasn't an alcoholic. But when she had a buzz going, she would be happy and nice to others and even more friendly with other guys. Nothing physical, just a lot more friendly and excited in conversation, but she always got more cold to me. She would give me looks as if she was judging or felt judged. I never cared that she got drunk, just how she treated me. I'm a lightweight, so 2 drinks in and I was nobody to judge for being tipsy. But when I was sober and she was not, she seemed to get upset that I was not in the same state she was in. I learned to dread when she drank around other people. The night of my son's birthday party, however, something was different. Even my sister-in-law remembered the exact moment and look 8 months later when I brought up that day with her. And remember, nobody except me knew that something had happened the day before. Easter, literally digging up trash for more evidence. The next day, We celebrated Easter as a family at my parents' house. We each had our own car since I came up the day before her, so we did the 1-hour drive back home separately. If you read the first post, you might remember that she said she was by herself, went to Taco Bell, and then came home. I had probably checked our banking app 20 times that weekend and still didn't see the charge. It was possible, though extremely unlikely, that she paid cash. So I sped home faster than her. When I got home, I grabbed our 1-year-old, we each took a kid, and raced in the house where I checked all the trash cans for Taco Bell trash. The trash had been emptied the day before, so anything older than Good Friday was empty. If she went to Taco Bell, the bag would have been the only thing in the trash. And she said she got it on the way home, so the trash would have to be brought home. There was nothing from Taco Bell in there. Nightfall and the showdown. I pretended not to know anything for the rest of the day and was nervous as hell to have to confront her at some point. I watched the boys at home while she went grocery shopping. We made dinner and ate as a family, while my stomach was in knots and I looked at the stranger eating dinner with my kids and me. It felt like it was taking an eternity to get through the day until we finally put the boys down. After they went down, she took a shower and said she was tired and going to bed. I knew my time was running short. Me, you're pretty tired from this weekend, huh? Her, yeah. Me, did you get some rest Friday? You said you just went to the mall then Taco Bell? Her, yeah. Me, but we both know that's not where you were. Her, what are you talking about? Yes, it was. Me, please don't lie to me. Just tell the truth. Her, I swear. I went to Old Navy, then a couple other stores at the mall, but I didn't buy anything. Then I went to Taco Bell and came home. Me, come on. Her, what, were you spying on me? Me, just tell me. Don't make this any harder on us. Her, okay, I went to the bar with some coworkers. Me, anywhere else? Her, that's it. Me, that's a lie. Her, were you spying on me? Me, just tell me. Her, I went to the office to drop Donald off after. Me, that's a lie. Her, I went to the train station. Me, for what, to drop Donald off? How long were you there? Her, just 2 minutes. Me, that's a lie as well. Had I told her what I knew or what evidence I had, she would have just confessed to all that and I wouldn't have known if I was still being lied to. My advice to anyone going through something similar is to not show your emotion and not tell them what you know. If they lay it out, there's a chance you can trust them and start rebuilding. If they don't, best case scenario is you have a long, hard battle ahead. Hopefully that becomes both of you fighting against the issue, and not each other. The truth starts trickling out. It was at this point that she told me that he kissed her and she kissed him back. When she said, he kissed me, she started crying. When she said, and I kissed him back, she started sobbing uncontrollably. And that made it hurt more. I wasn't even mad at this point. I was shocked and upset. And I was sad that she had done this, and that she was sad. It was as if another person took control of her body that night, and I was mad at that woman for making my wife sad. She said that they went to a bar with some coworkers and she had told them she had to go to the mall. He said that sounded fun. A married guy thought leaving a bar and returning another woman's husband's shirts sounded fun. So, Donald went with her. I should explain who Donald was. Donald and my wife worked together. He came to our oldest son's second birthday party with his wife and son just months before this, and I met him briefly. He gave her advice about their work and was a mentor. He even gave her advice about some of the services our oldest son was receiving. Our oldest son was in speech therapy and he talked to her about his experience with his son's therapy. His son has severe special needs. They became close work friends. And that's how Donald, a married man, ultimately ended up following my wife around on a Friday night while his wife and special needs son were at home. We talked for a while and I told her I was leaving for a bit because I couldn't be around her, so she should call her mom to assist her with the kids the next day. Her mom always stepped in to help when we needed help with the kids. She was a godsend with that stuff and became like a second mom to me. My wife refused and said she'd handle it herself, but I knew that she was too stressed out to do it herself, so I told her either she calls or I call. But I did not want to be around her, and I could not trust her out on her own, so I needed to be the one away from the house. I wound up staying that night and left for work with a suitcase and told her I'd be gone at least the next 2 days. There wasn't any name calling, no yelling. Just pure disappointment in her. And in myself, for what felt like a failure as a husband to get her to the point where she would consider doing this. Flashback to Friday. Back to Good Friday 2 nights prior, when she was out with Donald. I called her a couple times with some questions about the kids and the shopping list for our youngest son's birthday party the next day. She later told me that she told Donald it was like I was her third kid. He was in the car with her while we talked over her Bluetooth. She never once mentioned that she was out with him, or anyone for that matter. She denied being with anyone. But he heard our conversations. Donald, for his part, complained that his wife was suicidal and probably drinking a bottle of wine while watching their, just to reiterate, very special needs son by herself. While he was out with a married woman. Father of the Year. Anyway, he took the train to work and needed a ride back to the station. This is where the details never added up. Let's call that station North Station. He lived north of the office, that will be important later. It was at the station where they kissed for maybe a minute. However, I looked at her iPhone location history and she stayed there for about 15 minutes, but then dropped him off more south at, let's call it South Station because he missed his train. This doesn't make sense, because the train first stopped at South Station before North Station. Why would he go south and miss the train by a longer period of time? Oh, one small note. They both work in the building, empty at this time of night, above the South Station, and she was there even longer than she was at North Station. I never got the truth about what happened that night. To her credit, she was apologetic and offered to quit her job or let me look at her phone anytime I wanted. I told her that I don't want to make her quit, and I certainly don't want a relationship where it's based on me having to check up on her and monitor her. Little did I know that that was exactly the type of relationship I was about to enter with her.